Oh, come on. Come on. That is terrible. That is an absolutely terrible call that's going to decide this football game.
The following is a presentation of Hobson Media. Woohoo!
Who's got it better than us?
This is the Church Pew Sports Podcast, featuring a group of pastors delivering bombastic takes on sports, life, and faith.
We're going to attack this day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
Take a knee.
Man, it's hard to break us now. It's hard to break us. As a matter of fact, you ain't going to do it.
Lend an ear.
Well, these are some of the best questions I've had. I have to tell you that straight up.
As the Church Pew Sports Podcast begins.
We were all supposed to be here together, man. We're destined for this. Just stay the course.
Give each other a high five.
Oh, it's been a while since we've handed out high fives here on Church Pew Sports. It's good to have you all with us. Thanks for joining again as we gather to talk about the connection of sports and life and faith. Bill Hobson here, along with Pastor Paul Miller and David Collins. Momentarily, we will be joined by Randy Gilmer, who is the official legal counsel for all things Church Pew Sports. It seems like we've been diving into the legal realms a little bit here lately, and we'll get into what that means and as it connects to the Big Ten and this idea of venture capital investments in a college athletic conference. We'll get there. But boys, it's been a while. Paul, you've been on the road, I think maybe as much, if not more than I have.
Yeah.
Where you been and where are you now?
I'm home in Minneapolis now, but I've been, where have I been? Florida, Texas, Chicago. I can't even remember. It's been crazy. It's been crazy, but now I have a nice little stretch of 2 weeks of downtime, and then it ramps back up again for the holidays. So,
well, and David's joining us from his palatial estate on the west side of Michigan. I'm back in my home studio after journeys to, St. George, Utah, Mesquite, Nevada, Branson, Missouri, Hilton Head, South Carolina, since we recorded the last time. So it's been kind of a crazy time, and a lot has transpired in the sports world. Were all those travel
destinations for work?
Yeah, they were all
for pleasure.
No, they were all golf story related. So
I know you blur the line between those two, but
yeah, people don't give me much sympathy when I say that's.
You know the whole "you never work a day in your life" thing, right? That's
it's such hard work.
Oh, Randy's here just in time to chime in in that special moment. A lot has transpired. Oh, Randy thinks he's going to eat into the microphone while we're doing a podcast. I don't care if you're the Assistant Attorney General of the universe. Mute yourself if you're going to be eating on my podcast, mister.
It's cheese. I think I can do it quietly.
I don't know. I've been around you before a few times at the dinner table. You know, since we recorded the last time, a wild World Series, just wild, absolutely crazy, maybe the best of my lifetime World Series.
I watched all the games.
I watched most of them as well. David probably has them memorized. We had the launch of the NBA and NHL seasons. We had firings everywhere you look in the world of college football. And this coaching carousel was kind of set into motion. All these, just these wild headlines. David, if you had to summarize like the stories that jump out at you the most from, let's say, the last 3 weeks, what's the top of your leaderboard?
I mean, if you're going to talk about those stories, you've got to go with the World Series. I mean, the Game 7 was one of the most unbelievable games I've seen. Yamamoto's just or Yamanaga's just insane pitching, like to go 6 innings one game and then pitch the next day and finish the game out. Like that's absurd. You talk about the college coaching scenarios. I mean, there's so many great jobs open. James Franklin just got the Virginia Tech job. I think that's a great fit. There's this whole Lane Kiffin sweepstakes going on right now. LSU might want him. Florida definitely wants him. There's just a lot going on. Obviously, hockey's in full swing. The Wings are decent. The NBA's in full swing, and a lot of the same storylines. You know, Pistons are the best team in basketball. So, similar storyline to every other year.
No, I see now, David, for a while we had no ESPN on YouTube TV. So I lost track of how incredibly important the Lakers are. But when ESPN came back, I discovered the Pistons do not matter. That doesn't matter.
Nobody mentions them.
I mean,
I will say this, something nice, like Cade Cunningham just officially got like a Nike deal for his own shoe, his own signature shoe, which I think is cool. But it doesn't seem to matter with this team. They're missing 5-6 starters every game, and they're beating everybody. So I enjoy it, because, I'm sad about the Lions.
Well, we'll get to them in a moment, but we probably have to start at the top of the division since we have Paul here. And I don't know if anybody in their crystal ball excellence would have ever guessed that at this point of the season, 10 games in, that the top of the division in the NFC North would feature the Chicago Bears at 7-3, the Cardiac Bears pulling out wins every time it looks like they're going to lose. Paul, how high are you floating these days in Bearland?
Well, I'm definitely enjoying the season. I have to say that last year they were snake bit. This year the ball seems to be bouncing their direction a little more than it was last year. And I think the key is I've finally trained my Chicago Bears friends not to text me during the games. Because we all know how that goes when anybody texts me while I'm watching my team play. Bill, I did notice that during the last Bears game, you texted me a few times. You were trying to get me to reply in an effort to get the Bears to lose to help the Lions, but I did not take the bait. So there you go.
I just figured you were on an airplane somewhere, but I forgot that you have a policy in place.
Yeah, they're 7-3. Caleb Williams has figured himself out. I think Ben Johnson is finding his sea legs as a head coach, and all that's good. Their defense is still terrible. I was so surprised at how little the Vikings were able to do against their defense this past weekend. It has been fun to be in Minneapolis and hear all the chatter about JJ, good and bad. It's pretty hilarious, and I don't have to say much to either get a whole bunch of people on my side or piss off a whole bunch of people. So that I enjoy that. That's kind of one of my goals in sports, is to alienate people and endear myself to others. And so that's been really fun, just to talk about JJ's future, non-future, bust, patience, whatever the thing is that he needs, so.
I don't know what to make of young Mr. McCarthy in his early NFL career days. He's had some really cool moments and then some really head-shaking moments like most rookies will have at some point. But overall, if I were holding stock in J.J. McCarthy, I think I'd hold on to it for a while and see if it goes up a little bit. Randy, you're out there in Vegas. Your observations from the past few weeks of sports headlines, beginning with your Detroit Lions, would be what?
So the Lions are, we'll start with last night's game. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously I'm frustrated that they lost yesterday, but at the same time, you're like, that was a one-score game, and our defense gave up 16 points. Where in the world did this Legion of Whom come from, as I've heard them referred to by some people? It's really hard to get upset with Dan Campbell, but I really do think he needs to sometimes moderate his tendency to always be aggressive. I mean, last night seemed like one of those games typically, with Jack Fox, who is a great job of pinning people back, and we stopped them 3 times in our own side of the 50. It seems like instead of losing it 5 times on 4th down, any of those punts, could have pinned them back to the 10-yard line, see what might have happened. But at the same time, his aggressiveness is what's got us there. So it could be frustrating, but I do think that's hopefully a learning moment, and that if they're in that same situation in the future, maybe they will punt one of those times.
Or take the points, maybe, when it's
take the points. Yeah. So I wasn't sure. I mean, I mean, yeah, the points would have been nice. I thought there was, and maybe I missed it. I was really hoping on the telecast they would talk about the win. I mean, they talked about it at the beginning, but I was trying to follow if they weren't kicking because they thought that they wouldn't have it because of the wind. I couldn't carry that from the telecast.
No, that's a good point. I was actually like, okay, we know it's windy. Which way is it blowing? Could somebody give us a little context here? David, were you at any point yelling at Dan Campbell to take the points or do something different than he did on 5 fourth downs, or are you good to ride with him till the end?
I mean, I'm obviously good to ride with him to the end because, again, when you have an identity and the aggressiveness is part of who you are and what you do, you've got to live and die with that sometimes. But there were 2 or 3 times where I was saying, take the field goal here because we haven't shown this is where analytics and the feel of the game kind of come into the conversation, because there are some times like last night where they weren't moving the ball. Like Amon-Ra weirdly is not, I mean, this is the first time in my life, like he's gone 2 or 3 games in a row where I don't trust him to catch the ball every time now. There's a lot of things going on. And I think last night was a feel of the game moment where you probably needed to reward some of those 10, 11, 12 play drives with some points at the end. And it just seemed like they were stubborn. But at the same time, again, when it comes to crunch time, when the big moments come, am I okay losing if it's about being aggressive on 4th down? I'm not, because that's who Dan Campbell is. That's what this Lions team is. I was encouraged last night, as Randy was saying, 1-score game. We could have put 2 or 3 field goals in. There was a really bogus pass interference call that hurt us. But, and I will say this, the refs at the same time, A.J. Brown fell into a guy, and they called him for a block, and that was a 15-yard. There's a lot that goes into it. We stopped the tush push almost every time they tried to run it. There's a lot of positives. I kind of look at that game last night frustrated because we didn't win it. But at the same time, I think it proved that we are every bit as good as that team. It just, last night wasn't our night. And whatever we have to do with the play calling to figure out how to get Amon-Ra more involved. The second half, they came out, they started throwing screens to Gibbs, and that opened up the offense. We got him in space. We let him move. Jamison Williams was great all night. Like there are things that you can take from the game and go, fortunately, it's not college football, so one loss doesn't like kill you. So we can look at it and go, we're still 6-4. I think we're better than the Bears. I think we're as good as the Packers. Just gotta take care of business. The problem is also with the Lions is their schedule has just been brutal, because finishing first last year has given us, a lot of first place teams that they got to play. But I'm trying to stay grounded, not get overly excited about what happened last night.
David, you'll appreciate this. Text messages were flying back and forth in my fantasy league because the 2 first place teams in each of the divisions of our league, it's a big league, were playing each other over the weekend. And the only guy left that hadn't played yet was Amon-Ra St. Brown. And at halftime, the guy who had him in his lineup was down by 2 points. So all he needed was 1 catch for 10 yards, and he was going to win this showdown of first place teams.
Wow.
And how many points do you think St. Brown scored in the second half?
I don't think he had a catch. Yeah.
0.
Wow.
So the whole second half, guys are going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, just talking crap. And it was very, very fun to just observe.
Well, and that's the crazy thing, because with Amon-Ra and Jared Goff, everything's about timing. That Eagles front 4, they never have to blitz. I mean, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are insane. And then they went and did the thing that the Lions never seemed to do. They went and got Jalen Phillips from the Dolphins, and he was awesome last night. They were knocking balls down to the line of scrimmage. The timing just wasn't there because they caved everything in. And that was the frustrating thing, because there are play calls and things you can do. There was no bubble screens that we threw. There was a lot of stuff to get guys on the outside with opportunity. But the Lions' bread and butter is that 15 to 20 yard dig route over the middle to Amon-Ra. Like, it just wasn't there last night. So I think the offensive line needs a little bit of help. But again, the Eagles went out and added guys that could help them. The Lions didn't go out and add anybody.
David, that's perfect transition. That's what I wanted to get back in and circle back, because Bill said with the Lions since it started, I started with last night, is I think the frustration last night was the culmination of the frustration I had on trade deadline day when Brad Holmes again stands pat, and you use the word stubbornness to refer to Dan Campbell. When it comes to Brad Holmes, I'm going to use the word arrogance. I really think he has this arrogance about him that I want to build this through the draft and draft only, and I'm not going to trade for people. And I don't understand where that comes from. Neither him nor the Lions have earned that spot yet. I mean, when the Eagles go out and add at the trade deadline every year, and they're the Super Bowl champs. Every year they do it. And it doesn't make sense when Brad Holmes has been so good at finding the quote-unquote diamonds in the rough in the later rounds of the draft. It's like, okay, use those draft picks to get somebody to help us. And like, sometimes it's about defense. Sometimes you get the person so the other team that you need to win doesn't get the person. And look how it came back last night. Everybody they traded for it had a big game and had a big stop in that big moment in that game.
And to your point, Brad Holmes, like if you look at his third round draft picks over the last few years, what's Tesla doing? That's not, I mean, don't get me wrong. He hit on Ratledge. That dude's a baller, but he sometimes misses. Maybe use a third round pick and go get somebody if that's the area in the draft that you struggle a little bit with. He hits on all his first rounders, he hits on all his second rounders, and he hits on his later draft picks. But that third and fourth round area is where he struggles a little bit. So maybe those picks are expendable to go get. I mean, I wanted Trey Hendrickson, obviously, but they were asking a first round pick, whatever. But a Jalen Phillips didn't cost Philly much of anything. They add every year, and the Lions didn't add. That's where some of the frustration comes in.
Well, if this helps at all, I'm going to read. I pulled up the Bears schedule, the first place Chicago Bears. I'm just going to read the rest of their schedule for the season. Tell me how many games you think they win between now and the end of the season. Here's who they have left. Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Green Bay, Cleveland. Okay, maybe that's one. Green Bay again, San Francisco, and the last week of the season, they're at home against Detroit.
That's brutal.
It's brutal.
I give them two
and
out of
Detroit's one game back. I think they're fine.
Hey, man, the end of December in Chicago is nobody knows what that could look like, and you could be playing in the tundra with the Abominable and Rudolph trying to find.
I just want that game to have playoff implications. As a Bears fan, that's all I want.
To me, Paul, all I look at it is I say the Bears are ahead of schedule. I don't think they're on the Lions level yet. I think the Lions are going to end up in the division, but I think the Bears are ahead of schedule. You give them one or two more draft classes. If Ben Johnson can stay consistent, I'd be super happy if I was a Bears fan.
Oh yeah.
All right. So one last thought about the state of the professional game before we get into kind of our headline of the day, which is the Big Ten and all of the money stuff. I remember a young, I would say, 13 or 14-year-old Randy Gilmer, staff member, Hiawatha Youth Camp, very, very, very convinced that the NBA had a conspiracy against the Detroit Pistons, wrote a letter to Rod Thorne, who at the time was the director of operations for the league. And I mean, wrote a letter because there was no email back then. And we were playing basketball up on the big court, and a young Randall Gilmer came sprinting up the hill from the Miracle Building, waving an envelope over his head. I got it, I got it, I got it. He's yelling. We don't know what he's talking about. And he comes up and he's got an official, maybe you still have the letter. He's got an official NBA letterhead envelope from Rod Thorne to Randall Gilmer, care of Hiawatha Youth Camp, and it was a response to Randy's accusations of a league-wide conspiracy against the Pistons. And you'll be shocked to learn, but Rod Thorne denied that sort of thing existed. But he did get a letter back, which is a long-winded introduction for me to say, Randy, when are you writing the same thing to the National Football League?
Oh, come on. Come on. That is terrible. That is an absolutely terrible call that it's going to decide this football game.
And that's not just Chris Collinsworth who's saying that fairly vehemently, but here's Rex Ryan on ESPN this morning.
After the game, referee Alex Kemp, to a pool reporter, said the official observed the receiver's arm getting grabbed and restricting him from going up to make the catch, so the ball was in the air. There was a grab at the arm, restricted him, and he called defensive pass interference. So that is what happened, Rex.
Rini, can I have that, please?
Yeah, sure.
Are you kidding me? You're right. That is absolute garbage right here. And you're making it worse by coming up with that BS. Here's the problem, NFL. The entire country saw this. Everybody knows except the guy, the homeboy that throws the flag here. Chris Collinsworth, I thought, was tremendous on this call. Because he goes, if anything, it would be OPI, not DPI. You can't cover a guy any better than this. It's certainly not a foul. And look, the Lions, they probably wouldn't have scored. But you know what? I would like to have found out. They would have had 1:48 left.
Yep.
Like, come on. You got two of the greatest, athletes on the field in Gibbs and Williams. Who knows? One missed tackle, they may tie this thing up or go ahead and win the thing. So to me, I think it's absolute garbage. Never, ever invent a penalty that doesn't exist. Right. If anything, err on the side of caution. It's not hard. It better be legit. It's not legit, regardless of what kind of crap you told us.
All right. So, is it, Paul? I'll ask you this first because you're not a Lions fan, and the rest of us are. Is it just weak sauce on our part to care about that call?
No, I don't. I think as fans, you're obligated to. I do think you have to be careful in assuming that the Lions are the only team that has been victims of terrible officiating this year. That's not unique to the Lions. That's kind of an epidemic in the league right now. That's the only thing I would say.
I don't know how we don't, David, I don't know how we don't make PI calls reviewable.
Yeah, well, they did about 5 years ago. They did it for a year, and then they got rid of it.
They did it in a playoff game with the Lions and Cowboys once. I remember that.
Yeah. Paul, this is the problem with what you just said, is that literal rules are invented because of things that happened to Detroit. The Calvin Johnson rule. There was the who was the running back for the Texans on Thanksgiving one year, where he got tackled and was clearly down, knee down in the middle of the field, got up, ran to the end zone. Jim Schwartz threw the red challenge flag, and there was a rule for the NFL at the time that if you throw a challenge flag on a play that's automatically challenged, they just won't challenge it. And they just gave him a touchdown. They removed that rule. These rules are invented because of things that happened to the Lions. So, yes, they are not the only team that has been on the bad side of this. And I even brought it up earlier. The Antonio Brown call was a disaster. Yeah. Dude just tripped, fell into a player, and they called him for an illegal block. It goes a lot of different ways, and they're changing plays. The frustration is that it was that timing when it happened, that it was a third down stop. It was clear as day, offensive pass interference, if anything, but I would have appreciated a no call because it was hand fighting. But I'm with Rex Ryan when he said, I don't think the Lions would have scored anyway. They just were not playing that way last night. But I was watching the game. My best friend in the world is a Philadelphia Eagles fan. He made us cheesesteaks last night. I hung out over there, a couple Detroit Lions fans, a couple Eagles fans. And like all of us at the end of the game were unsatisfied because even he was like, I hated that it ended that way. Like I would have appreciated to see the ending, like the players be the ones that resolved that game. So
and it was foolish. By the way, if I remember correctly, guys, it was in Eagles territory. So the Lions would have taken over. Well, they would have had to punt, but it would have taken over in pretty good field position. And okay, so I need you guys to just quickly put on your tinfoil hats for me because I have a question for you in regards to that moment. Why do we think only the NBA has a problem with competitive integrity? Randy, am I nuts? Am I in Area 51 out there in your part of the world when I think that, I don't know. I mean, there's such an egregious call. Is it worth the question?
No, I think it's worth the question. Circling back to where the started with the NBA letter, I guess I can't send the letter until the Lions win the Super Bowl because I sent that letter the year that the Pistons still won still won the NBA championship.
I didn't know that.
So,
okay.
Start writing.
So I had to wait until they won because I didn't want it to make it look like it was poor sports. I said, we won despite your hatred and conspiracy.
Do you still have the letter? Do you still have the return letter?
It's probably somewhere, but I do not know where.
You've got to find this.
Anyway, no, I mean, I think it's legitimate. And I mean, I remember the same conversation coming up after the Kansas City game. To Paul's point, yes, there are a lot of egregious calls that happen in the NFL. It might not just be the Lions, but how many of those egregious calls happen against the Eagles, against the Chiefs? I mean, where they are the ones that are on the bad side of those calls. It appears as if the NFL has their favorites and they want to play their favorites. Now, I did hear somebody, and I can't remember who it was on the media that pointed this out. You do sometimes get the benefit of the whistle if you're always a good team. But that being said, what happened last night was ridiculous. And what happened in the Chiefs game was against the rules of the NFL, by all accounts, when they spent 5 minutes reviewing a touchdown that was not a reviewable play. Yeah. I mean, to call a foul or to call a penalty.
I'll just say this. There have been numerous times in the NFL where a flag has been thrown, but then there's been a discussion amongst officials, and there have been flags picked up. That really would have been a wise course of action last night. So, all right, this isn't even supposed to be.
I love what the ACC is doing with ESPN now. If you guys have watched any with the instant replays, where they actually show the instant replay, like the war room, and you can actually hear the conversations. I think that's great. I love that transparency, and it's really cool to see that. I think it'd be cool if every league did that, something similar to that.
Yeah, so I would agree. So, all right, let's make the transition over from our frustrations with, three of us having frustrations with the current NFL happenings, and one of us being very, very happy about his team. Let's transition over to what's happening in the college game, because while competition is taking place and while coaches are getting fired and hired, and while Michigan barely squeaks by Northwestern, and while Ohio State continues to roll over everything in their path, there's this sub-story that's really, I think, largely flying under the radar for the 99% of college sports fans. And Paul, you can kind of make sure I'm presenting this properly and you can color in the details, but my understanding is that there is a potential investment of billions of dollars waiting to be approved to come into the Big Ten, where each school would get a lot of money, kind of a staggered or a tiered amount of money for the blue bloods at the top, the middle of the pack, and then there's even some for teams nobody cares about. But this VC investment is being held up or largely opposed right now, at least publicly, by Michigan and USC. I don't think Ohio State's gone on the record yet for this. What is this all about?
Yeah, I think it's, from what I understand, the Big Ten presidents kind of commissioned Petiti, the whatever his title is, commissioner of Big Ten Sports, whatever, to go pursue alternative funding mechanisms and strategies. And so he comes back, he does that, and he comes back with this. I don't think it's a private equity fund. I think it's some kind of venture capitalist thing connected to the University of California, if I got my facts straight. But it is a huge infusion of money to all the Big Ten teams at a time when a lot of them could use it, in exchange for a 10% stake in like future earnings. So there's the Big Ten's media deal with CBS and NBC, I think, is up in 2030, and then their deal with Fox is up in 2036. So they would get a 10%. This company would get a 10% cut of those deals. So there's a lot of money at stake here, and what they're talking about is they want all of the schools to buy in. There's a tiered, you hinted at this, Bill, there's a tiered strategy where the blue blood programs, I think the top tier, in other words, the schools that get the biggest cut of the money, it's not an equal distribution. Rutgers doesn't get the same amount as the University of Michigan kind of thing. Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan are in the top tier, and then USC is in the second tier, along with Oregon and a couple of other schools. And so there's big money at stake here, and USC is opposing it because they are saying we're not a second-tier program. Give us the same cut as Ohio State and Michigan get, right? That's basically what I think USC is saying. I'm not as clear on why Michigan is holding out, and maybe Randy, you might have more information on that. I know that Ohio State, based on the things I've been reading and seeing, hasn't yet fully endorsed it, but they're closer to being in agreement than Michigan would be, for example. They have other questions about the makeup and the accountability for this group. And is there going to be now some private fund guy sitting at the table when the Big Ten is getting together to talk about how they're going to do football? That's what they're trying to avoid. So I don't think Ohio State has said we're in, but they haven't said we're out like Michigan and USC have been saying. That's essentially where I think we sit today. And I think there's a vote scheduled for like Friday.
So Randy,
so now there's all the posturing going on, and will they do it if Michigan and USC continue to hold out? Would they do that anyways? And they're threatening to do that. And there's all these other, we'll put your money in escrow, and if you come around, then you can have it. But otherwise,
so
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So if this is like a Shark Tank episode, these investors are trying to buy equity in Big Ten schools, a percentage of the equity of the revenue that comes from all the TV and all the licensing and all the everything. Yeah. Randy, what's wrong with this, and what's logical about this? Why is this even here?
So I think what's wrong with it, and I mean, looking at it from an outside, the reason why I think University of Michigan is opposed to it is a couple things. One, I think they think it's undervaluing what the Big Ten is worth. I mean, and I think that they view this as there are a lot of Big Ten schools that have overspent, and that we're entering into this new NIL deal, and they need money to pay for players legally and legitimately, something that the SEC had done for years and not legally or legitimately. And so they need this money. And so they're looking at this as a quick buyout. And so I think Michigan really does think that it's undervalued, even though they're in that top tier. And I'm a lawyer, so I don't do math very often, but if they're getting 10% of this new equity, it's called Big Ten Enterprises is what they were going to create. Yeah. That means that each of the schools is only going to get a 5% stake. So the equity company, or whatever we're calling it, because it's even though it's a venture capitalist, it's not really private equity because it's University of California. It runs similarly, is getting more profits moving forward than what the individual schools will get. If my math is correct, 18 times 5 is 90%, and they're getting 10%. And so I think that inherently is a problem, that you're giving this outside group more of it's not a majority, but it's a plurality that's higher than any other ownership stake that the schools are going to have. So I think that's part of it. And then the third piece that I think it was one of the regents, either Shapiro or Bernstein, because those are not Shapiro, but two of the U of M regents are going on record more on this.
Jordan Acker was one of them.
Yeah, Jordan Acker, that's the one I was thinking of. Thank you. Is that everybody thinks extending these rights out to 2046 is a great idea. Well, let's ask the ACC what they thought about that. And that was at a time when there wasn't changes on the college football landscape every day. So I think Michigan thinks it's undervalued at the moment. I don't think Michigan likes the fact that this stake, that they'll have a higher equity stake than the schools has. And I think Michigan really thinks it's not the time to be extending media rights for another 21 years in the current framework of college football and be bound into it.
It's 21 years?
It would go through 2046, so that's 21 years from where we sit today, because it would extend it out 10 years from the 2036 deadline.
Let me clarify that, Randy. I was reading today. Right. What it does is it forces the grant of rights to extend to 2046, which means the Big Ten schools are all committed to each other for 20 years, 22, 21 years. Not so much to this private equity fund, but to each other. So I think some schools are saying it's not strategically wise to lock us in to being a part of the Big Ten as it's currently constructed for 20 years. And I think that's a really legitimate concern.
So
now, those who are in favor of it would probably argue that that stability and long-term projection is a good thing, and it'll help them when they negotiate their media rights deals with CBS and NBC and Fox, all coming up in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's kind of getting spun in both directions, but I think that's a big thing that's at the heart of this deal.
So
yeah, it'll help Rutgers. It'll help Northwestern. It's probably not going to help Ohio State or Michigan. And that was going to take me to my fourth point. I think especially, and I know Paul might disagree with us, or at least my maize and blue colored glasses on this. After sign stealing and what Tony Petitti did, the Big Ten punished us more than the NCAA did. So I think there's a lot of people that will be like, you know what? The Big Ten's never had our back. Why are we bailing everybody else out? We can be fine. If Notre Dame can live as an independent, so can we.
Well, in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, socialism is very popular, and it appears that that's the mindset of the Big Ten. So here's a quote from Jordan Acker, the U of M regent, from a radio interview he did today. He says, Michigan has a lot of options. The possibility of independence for football is certainly something that has to be considered. Not today, but at the end of the grant of rights. And for everybody wondering what that is, that's basically the current contract, which runs through 2036. He says, I think it's something you have to think about. Not because we want to leave the Big Ten, but because the commissioner's office has made it enormously clear that they're going to move forward without us. I don't think that's true. And that would be the end of Michigan as far as I can see in the Big Ten Conference. David, you kind of hinted at that in a couple of text messages earlier today. As you wrap your head around this topic and all of this, part of me, because quite often when I try to guess where David is on a subject, he zigs when I zag and I'm guessing wrong. But part of me says, you're thinking, yeah, this is what I've been clamoring for years. And the other part is Michigan out of the Big Ten is not something I'm prepared for. So where is David Collins on this?
No, I definitely agree with Randy and a lot of what he was saying. And Paul, I appreciate your clarifications, but there's just too much that we don't know is going to happen with the NCAA over the next, like you said, 20 plus years. Like there's just too much. There could be an SEC Big Ten merger and remove the NCAA altogether. There's so much that could happen that to lock yourself into something for that long, it just means that you're playing the short game, but it ends up being quite a long game if it's 20 plus years, when all these other schools could jump ship, go to different conferences. We just don't know right now. It's like the value of these teams is going up and up and up and up. Michigan and Ohio State and all these, it's going up and up. You're seeing money come in from Saudi Arabia trying to buy stakes of college football teams as private entities. And to lock yourself into something right now for a long period of time makes no sense as a school. I'm surprised that Ohio State hasn't already said like they're not interested, but they might not be, but they're actually probably holding their cards close to the chest just to kind of see how things work out, what the perception is and what values they are being projected. But I would hate it if the Big Ten stopped existing, but the Big Ten isn't what the Big Ten was when I was growing up. So it's like, we have to stop being guided by these principles of a past world before NIL happened, before people could buy, stock in teams, before everybody, the ACC has a West Coast division. The whole thing it's so up for grabs that I would not want to be somebody that locks myself in for something. Even if the money comes in, you're asking for the money on the front end of a long-term deal. The back end of that deal is going to be where the problems are. Just ask the Dodgers when they're paying Shohei Ohtani, several million a year about 40 years from now.
Yeah. I was reading today, and I should probably say this, don't assume that if Ohio State comes out and says they're for this, that I agree with that. Because I don't. I heard a guy today liken it to, those places where you can go and get a payday advance, where you can go in and you can get your paycheck a week early, and this is so great. And then but you pay a cut for that privilege of getting your money a little bit early. That was, to me, who's not a money guy, that's actually the best analogy that I can think of. I do think Ohio State is trying to be a little more careful and politically correct. They are not. I agree with you, Randy. Ohio State is not in the position that Michigan is, where they already view the NCAA as an enemy, and for a good reason. So I just think that's why they're playing it differently. Ohio State's the biggest brand in college football. They would stand to make the most money off of whatever the deal ends up being, which probably means they also have the most at risk. And so I don't think getting the money up front is a good move.
Well, so we have this unique point in time where if this discussion were taking place in relationship to the National Football League, which it is, we just don't care, with investments coming in from outside and, buying equity and all that stuff just to drive revenue, people aren't going to care about that because it's professional sports. And I think the slowness of the adjustment in this whole curve is some of us, like me, still hold out this bizarre, long-held idea. I know David hates this, but we're still dealing with college
football's
athletes.
Been professional sports
I know.
For years.
College athletes. Is there any such thing as a Division I student athlete anymore? When was the last time we heard of an athlete being ineligible because of his grades? Okay, so I'm going to take my old school thought and I'm going to tie it into this comment from University of Houston basketball coach Kelvin Sampson.
At some point, somebody's got to step up and say, this is wrong. It's not what we signed up for. It's not what they signed up for. That's not fair to them either. It's not fair to their parents. We're still at an educational institution. But there's nothing educational about college basketball right now. It's all transactional. And then we go put our head in the sand and act like, well, it'll change eventually. Think how many ADs 5 years ago said, this will play out. This won't last. Okay?
Merely transactional. David loves this old man argument.
Dude, we're now happy if a player is getting recruited and they say, NIL is not the most important thing. I'm also interested in development to getting me ready to play in the league. Right. Like we go, that guy has his priorities set. He's still not talking about what his education is going to be. And he's still not talking about wanting to earn a degree. He's just talking about, I think this school will get me ready to make the real money when I get to the NFL. And I'm willing to take a little bit of a smaller NIL bag in exchange for that. And we hold that guy up and say, he's been parented really well. That's so awesome. That's like where we are now today.
And part of me is probably jaded a little bit because, I spend Saturdays in the fall calling football games for Division II University, Saginaw Valley State. So the season just ended and those, nobody there is getting NIL. In fact, my nephew who was on the team told me, we got this sweet NIL deal. I said, oh, really? As a team, what is it? We go to Quiznos, we go to Qdoba and we get free upsize on burritos.
You can supersize your meal.
You still got to pay for the burrito, but you don't have to pay for the extras when you show them your football player. So that's what I'm talking about there. There still is a level of this competition that's very different from what we're seeing at D1. And for some reason, and I know I'm saying this as a guy whose quarterback is being paid $12 million by Larry Ellison to go out and act like the quarterback before him. But I still just have this, I was hoping there would still be, and this is the old timer in me. I was still hoping to find one little little slice of sports that I didn't feel like I needed to take a shower from. And it used to be for me, perhaps because I chose to have my blinders on, it used to be college athletics. And I understand Fab 5 was certainly well ahead of its time. But it just seems like the horse is way out of the barn. So now we're going to take conference-wide investments and further change this whole dynamic. So now it's just a Shark Tank episode. And that's really kind of what it boils down to be. David, I'll give you the last word on this before we go to Holy Discontent.
Yeah, the one thing I want to say is Bill, I long for the time when I was younger and I saw these sports and I had this, the curtain hadn't been pulled back, but once it got pulled back, you just cannot ignore the fact that what was going on was actually bad. But you had all the best sports movies are from that time. Like there was something romantic about the way that sports were. But I would also say there was something romantic about the way politics were and the way the president was. And there was something romantic about like people in your life that you looked up to. And a lot of that stuff has been shredded, and you have to accept it for what it is, as unfortunate as that is. I also miss the times you're talking about. The curtain was pulled back for me too long ago, and now I can't unsee the things I've seen.
You know when the curtain really got ripped away? It was when a young Randy Gilmer wrote the letter to Rod Thorne.
That was what did it for me.
Here we go. Holy discontent.
It's time to blow off some steam. Get it off your chest. Rant about what's most bothering you.
I got a lot of problems with you people. Now you're going to hear about it.
It's time for Holy Discontent.
I'll go first, and I'll be very short. I'm just irritated with officiating and the lack of accountability. The pool reporter, after the Lions-Philly game, came in. The pool reporter gets to ask the head official a question or two, and he asked him about the call. The guy just doubled down on it. I just think that's ridiculous. That's the end of my holy discontent. Randy Gilmer, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just circle back. I mean, similar to you with the officiating, and I mean, as I mentioned with the Lions game, I mean, Brad Holmes and this refusal to just make the team better at trade deadline. And we're in this moment of where we've always waited our entire life for the Lions to be good. And it just looks like we're going to possibly miss that moment moving forward.
David Collins, what do you got?
Yeah, so mine's actually from a couple weeks ago when you guys did a podcast I was supposed to be on and I wasn't able to be there.
Momentum.
But, I'm going with FIFA.
Oh,
surprise, surprise. The number 2 most corrupt organization in sports behind the International Olympic Committee. What I wanted to bring up was the fact that they have now taken the approach of forcing secondary sellers of tickets to use their site to sell the tickets. No one else can sell secondary tickets to the World Cup that's coming to America outside of using FIFA's own sites. FIFA then, because it's their site, removed how much you can sell the tickets for. It used to be that if you were selling a secondary ticket, you had to sell it for face value. Now you can sell it for whatever you want. And then on top of that, not only did they force you to use their site for it, not only did they tell you you can sell it for whatever you want, they are charging a 15% charge to the buyer of the ticket and a 15% charge to the seller of the ticket. So they are receiving a 15% bump from both the buyer and the seller. And the reason they removed the limits for how much you can list it for is because the more the ticket's worth, the more that 15% is. So they have completely cornered the market and are charging people on both sides of the seller and the buyer. And it is absolutely absurd. At least they chose like North America area to do this World Cup because, you know, in years past, they have somebody under the table, give them a bunch of money, and they give the World Cup to that country, and then they force them to quickly build stadiums, and then they bring in people from Bangladesh and other places and live in shipping containers, and a bunch of them die. And then their state-run medias cover it all up. So at least they chose America this time because we have the infrastructure.
Man, I hope Michigan doesn't learn about this 15% buyer-seller thing, or they're going to be next.
Craziness. I mean, how insane is this?
That's crazy. And people will pay it for some odd reason.
Right out in the open, too.
Yeah. Wow. Paul, you're wholly discontent.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide if I want to go there because I'm looking at my Zoom screen and it's 3 guys who are probably going to be pissed at me in about 2 minutes, but I'm going. My holy discontent is with Michigan State's punishments that the NCAA just dropped on them.
Well deserved.
Not because I think Michigan State is a clean program and not because I think they didn't have recruiting violations and didn't deserve everything they got. Not because of the irony of them having to vacate the Central Michigan game, not the University of Michigan, the game that, you know what I'm talking about.
Were Stallions on the sidelines?
Yes, and not because they had to vacate wins. Vacating wins is supposedly per the NCAA only for when you use ineligible players. Like, let me check my notes. Someone who might be in an LLC selling vacuum cleaners or something. But I'm not going there at all. I am frustrated with the number of friends of mine who texted me to ask me if I saw what happened to Michigan State. And then to make the intellectual leap to say, see, this proves Michigan did nothing wrong. I don't want you. I'm so amazed at how many people made that leap to say, look what happened to Michigan State. Because that didn't happen to Michigan, this proves they didn't cheat. I'm over it. I'm done with it. It keeps coming back around to haunt me. I think I just need to block all those people and delete them from my phone because I'm a little bit tired of it. It's the story that won't die with me. No one in this call has texted me to hint at that. That's why I'm trying not to yell at you guys for something that other people have done. But there might be a few folks from my former church that have tried to make that argument with me, and I'm a little tired of it. So
I will simply tag your holy discontent with this thought. Michigan State so desperately does not want to pay Mel Tucker the rest of his contract that they readily agreed to this without any sort of protest or appeal or evidence to the contrary. They just said, oh yeah, you're right, you busted us, and it was all his fault. And they were like, we're going to save about $50 million. And those wins meant nothing to us. So when we talk about a lack of a spine and maybe even a little bit of competitive integrity, my friends in East Lansing got some splaining to do. That's for sure.
That I agree with.
Yeah. Let me roll us into the end. Because of time, we're going to go right to the 3-minute message. This one's really cool.
Homer, I'd like you to remember Matthew 7:26. The foolish man who built his house on sand.
And you remember Matthew 21:17.
And he left them and went out of the city into Bethany, and he lodged there?
Yeah. Think about it.
We would indeed encourage you to think about it. And we have this kind of a unique moment, this unique opportunity where when somebody is asked what really matters the most to them, what is it you want to be remembered for? What is it that you stand for? What is it that in your life you would like to have be the kind of the hallmark of who you are and what you stand for? And it's such an unusual setting for this question to be asked because the question took place on a Barstool Sports podcast. Pardon my take. It's one of the most popular podcasts in the world. And the guest was the Maryland Terps basketball coach, Buzz Williams. And he has asked the question, what is it you most want to be remembered for? And this answer is, I think it took everybody on that show by surprise, and it really caught my ear too.
I want to be famous in my home. I want to be my wife's best friend. I want to be the dad and husband that my boys look at and go, man, if I could do that every day, that would be a great life. Mm-hmm. And I want my girls to grow up and go, I love that my dad treats my mom like that. And that's the kind of husband that I want to marry.
I guarantee you the guys on the show were not anticipating that answer. And especially when you're in there talking about sports and your legacy as a coach. I love that. And for our 3-minute message, I would just kind of encourage everybody listening to answer the question for yourself. What is it that you would most like people to think about you, to remember about you, to say about you? And, they talk about how it's a shame that you only get to hear the really nice things about somebody at their funeral. And then, of course, that person is not able to hear it. Wouldn't it be cool if we all lived our lives in such an integrity-filled manner that people were saying those things about us while we were around? You know, maybe they're in other conversation and somebody says, what about that Gilmer guy? And the answer is, this guy's as good as they get. This guy loves his wife. He loves his kids. He loves his Lord. He loves, and then the way we asked David Collins, and then he comes up with another thumbs down answers as we're seeing. Guys and ladies, the answer to the question is not, I want to be remembered for all the wins or the losses or the coaching or the accolades or the MVPs or the Super Bowl trophies. The answer really needs to be, I want to be remembered for the things that matter the most. I want to love the Lord, my God, with all my heart, my mind, my soul, my strength. I want to love my neighbor as myself, and I want to make a difference for my family and those around me. And my encouragement would be that as you think about these things, that you would think about those things. And it's a pretty cool reminder from a coach that I don't know if he was intentionally giving us a devotional, but he kind of was. Good stuff. David, good. Paul, Randy, thank you so much. Good to connect again. It won't be so long before we do it again. I'm off the road now for the most part. I think Paul's home for a bit, so we'll talk to you again next week with another episode of Church Pew Sports.